This video contains spoilers for Percy Jackson Season 2. You have been warned. Hello there, and welcome back to the channel. Alright, so this video is going to be a little bit more on the rambly side. I've got some notes here kind of just describing my thoughts on the season, and since I gave a review of Season 1, 2 years ago, I figured I should make a review of Season 2. Kind of just for some context before we really get into the meat and potatoes here. I've been I would say a casual Percy Jackson fan my whole life. I read The Lightning Thief probably 6th grade or something. And, I read the original 5 books, the original series, and I loved it. I immediately fell in love with this entire world. Nowadays, I wouldn't consider myself a hardcore fan because, there's the new series with the Romans and whatever. Lost Hero, I read that book and I didn't really care for what they were doing, and so I kind of stopped reading and keeping up with all the lore after that. But I have extremely fond memories of that original series, Percy Jackson. I mean, everyone in my school was reading it, and even to this day, my brother's a huge Percy Jackson fan. He's kept up with all the content, and even the spin-offs with the Egyptians, and I think they're doing Norse mythology now. So my brother and I were pretty much watching the season side to side. A little bit from different angles. Again, he's a super hardcore fan. I'm more of on the casual side. And so anyways, for me personally, it's been a decade plus since I've read those original books. So my memory of them is a bit foggier than your more hardcore fan. So I just want to let you all know that before we get into, the actual review. So with all that out of the way, what I think of the season? Well, overall, this was a much needed improvement. I mean, Season 1 was it was just mid. It was the definition of mid. It was kind of just a play-by-play of the Lightning Thief, but it didn't really care for actual character arcs or interesting fight sequences or anything like that. It was literally just checking off boxes of what happened in the book with a few minor differences here and there. And so, from both a fan and just normal TV perspective, I didn't really care for Season 1 too much. It was kind of just there. Season 2, however, was actually really enjoyable. I mean, I really connected with quite a few of these characters. They're actual character arcs. We were actually exploring the world, not just, speed running the plot. It was actually a pretty fun time. It was sick seeing the zombie boat, the sirens and the actual sea of monsters. It was pretty awesome, seeing Blackjack, and the probably famous episode was great. I mean, it was just, again, there was a lot more attention to detail and just a lot more fun and character in this season than the last one. Specifically, I think Clarice is easily the best character in the show. Now, while Tyson was my favorite, I mean, I love Tyson. This season, he was kind of just ore farming and being the GOAT. There wasn't a ton of depth with his character, but Clarice, on the other hand, had a really good arc and great character moments. I really liked her story, with her her zombie crew, especially as she kind of tugged between being a good captain and completing the quest. Bro, Mitch from Blockbuster, losing the streaming wars. I mean, come on, that's awesome.
Huh? Oh, come on! You gotta admit this is cool!
But I think the most interesting part about Clarice's character was how she was dealing with the prophecy she was given. Again, she's kind of tugging between her responsibility to the camp and sort of to her father versus her need and her want for friendship. So it was great seeing that. And specifically, I think probably the best scene in the entire show was when Percy and Clarice were fighting whether to give the Golden Fleece to Luke, to either to save Annabeth or to save Camp. This scene was great because it perfectly embodies each character's weaknesses and motivations. It's sort of a no-win scenario, and it forces our characters to make tough decisions that actually have consequences. And again, specifically the fallout, because Clarice is obviously pissed that Percy gave Luke the Golden Fleece, and so Percy retaliates, being maybe the prophecy is true, you're not gonna have any friends. And that's a crazy thing to say, and that you can just really see how that affects Clarice. And again, so I think her arc was amazing. It was pretty much the best part of the season, as I mentioned before. and it's not really even close. That is a little, I will mention this a little later, that is kind of like one of my quote unquote bigger problems with the show. Clarice is a side character. Like, she should not have the best arc in the show. But let me go through, the positives of the season before I get to the negatives. Going back to Polyphemus, I think that episode was probably my favorite. I mean, it had great production design, a really good CGI, and just the general story was great. It had really good moments from all of our characters. The sequence of them trying to trick Polyphemus, Annabeth, having the cap going invisible, like, that was just really funny and like actually like pretty smart. And I love the part where like Percy and Annabeth are just pretending to be sheep, the meh, meh, like just priceless. I may have mentioned this before, but I really, really like the final battle at Camp Half-Blood. I don't entirely remember if like that's specifically where it takes place. And also like there were like a few like logical inconsistencies that happened in the battle, like specifically the monsters trying to infiltrate. But overall, I thought the battle itself and really all the action this season was really well choreographed. Like there was actual like good, like actually good tension and like good like thought put into the fight sequences of the season. So again, one of the other major upgrades from season 1. I mean, I really want to emphasize that this was just like a cohesive season of television, which season 1 was not. Percy dealing with his prophecy, like dealing with all his responsibility that he has. I mean, that was another highlight of the season. His relationship with Tyson, like that was really, really well written. I love that scene with, Tyson, Percy, and Poseidon. It was just a really heartfelt moment. It was just, again, like Tyson's the GOAT. Like, I don't know what else to say. Now, speaking of Tyson, this does actually lead into my first big complaint of the show. We really needed an additional episode in the beginning. I mean, I don't know why we're just randomly introducing Tyson. Like, the show just kind of tells us Percy and Tyson are friends, and we kind of just have to accept it. That's not good writing. Like, look, the acting with both of them was great, but it was really hard to feel the bond between the two because the show didn't earn it. Like, again, Tyson kind of just is randomly living with Percy, like at the beginning of the season. Look, I understand what Tyson and Percy's relationship is because I read the books, but if there's someone new who's watching the show, like, it just feels incredibly random. Like, who the hell is this Cyclops? Like, why is he here? Now, ultimately, the show does give us, like, a lot of scenes between the two that really does solidify their brotherhood. But, again, we really needed an episode prior to the season, like, to the current season premiere, to actually establish their bond and why they're friends. Like, sure, Tyson exposition dumps his loneliness during that final scene with Poseidon. But again, you don't really feel that emotional connection. You don't really understand what Tyson is going through, or Percy for that matter. I mean, Percy gets an even, lesser explanation. We don't really know why he accepts Tyson as a friend other than like just because, I guess. I mean, again, it's incredibly random. So at the end of the day, their friendship doesn't feel earned. And so that actually leads into my second big complaint, which is the Netflixification of TV. Now, I think we've all seen that interview with Matt Damon with his new movie about how Netflix wants to thumb down their television and their movies so that people can like watch their phones, be on their little TVs while they're watching like their Netflix shows. And like, you can really, I mean, that's probably like something that's happening all across streaming. And it really makes sense because you can really feel that happening with this season as well. There are so many things that don't need explaining that are way too over-explained in this show. As I already mentioned, Tyson exposition dumping his loneliness. Annabeth, wanting her respect from her mother. We don't really see that outside of, dialogue with Percy. This is even more noticeable whenever they're trying to plan stuff. Like, it makes for extremely unnatural dialogue. It's actually very reminiscent of Stranger Things Season 5. Annabeth will be like, the plan is, and then Percy responds, A, B, and C, just like we talked about. That is not natural or effective dialogue. Nobody talks like that when they're in the middle of actually doing their plan. It doesn't trust the audience to follow what is happening on screen, and it's kind of annoying. And the stuff that actually does need explaining is never brought up. I could be a moron for this example, so just comment below if I'm stupid. But Percy, he's on the cruise ship, Luke's cruise ship, and he meets Blackjack, and he just starts talking to him. Now, this is because Poseidon is the god of horses, so therefore it makes sense for Percy to talk to him. I know that because I read the books, but that isn't explained in the show as far as I remember. So for someone who hasn't read the books, that's going to come off as really random and confusing. Like, since when did he start talking to horses? You know, like, what's up with these ladies in the taxi cab with the one eye? You know, who's this Tantalus guy? How the hell can Luke teleport? Like, again, a lot of these answers are in the book, or, you know, search it up for Greek mythology, like, whatever. But for a new viewer, or for a casual viewer like me who hasn't read the book in like a decade, you know, these are the types of questions we're asking. So it really feels like we're out of the loop, because they're not properly explaining the things that they really need to explain. And finally, the biggest complaint I have, I mean, about really the entire show, is the gods are just too evil. As of right now, there's absolutely zero reason why I should be rooting for the Olympians. Now, I know there's, you know, kind of a meme and a joke. Oh, Zeus is sus, you know, he's a diddler, he's trash. Like, I get it. And he kind of was in the original myth. But there needs to be some reason why Percy wants to be on the side of the Olympians. There needs to be some reason why the audience, like, sides with the Olympians over Kronos. And as of right now, the Olympians kind of act more like Sith. And speaking of Sith, Kronos isn't evil enough. Look, I know he wants to start like this evil empire or whatever, but again, that's only because I read the books. In the show, he just comes off as a revolutionary leader on the wrong side of history, not a sociopathic monster. The most we get is one scene with Luke where he's like Kronos using his like Kylo Ren powers to be like, oh, you will kill Percy Jackson. It's like, okay, like, cool, like, kind of edgy, I guess. So again, like, I understand you're trying to do this whole angle of, you know, trying to make it make sense why Luke and some of these other demigods would join Kronos. Like, that is something a lot of these authoritarian leaders do. They use these tactics and these real world problems to influence people to join their cause. That's like an actual thing that happens. But we haven't really seen like Kronos or his like goons be evil. And again, the Olympians are just too evil. It's like all they do is abandon their children and abandon people when they're like asking them for help. I mean, Medusa, for example, I mean, they just screwed her over. Look at how Ares treats Clarice. Look at how Hermes treats Luke. Hermes is a joke. He's just gambling all day long. It's like, what the hell are we doing? The world's literally falling apart. You guys are doing nothing. Let's stop beating around the bush and let's get to that Thalia reveal. I mean, this was just dumb. So, in the original, because obviously the writers forgot, Thalia gives up her life to protect her friends. She gives the ultimate sacrifice so that the camp and her best friends could be protected from the monsters that were chasing them. And so Thalia is kind of put up on this godlike status because she did the hardest thing imaginable. Like, she cared so much for her friends, she was willing to put her life down on the line. Like, that makes her an intrinsically interesting character. But nope, let's toss away her character, her agency, her grit, just for another excuse to make Zeus look trash. I mean, seriously, Zeus already looks bad enough. Why are we having him essentially murder his daughter just for his own self-interest? It's dumb. In the books, he actually cared about his children. I mean, that's the whole thing about what happened in the original book. Like, Zeus cared so much for his daughter that he didn't want her sacrifice to be, like, solely in vain. So he made it this, like, he literally turned her into a symbol for the protection of camp. Like, that's awesome. But no, for some reason we have to tease this like villain origin story for Thalia. Like, it's stupid. Now, theoretically speaking, I could see them like making this work. You know, for example, let's say Thalia is like the main villain of season 3, and by the end she redeems herself. She sees the error in Kronos' ways and she fights for the Olympians again. Okay, like, that could be, you know, an interesting part of her character that wasn't really explored in the original, or at least to my memory. That could be interesting. But even then, it would still kind of be bad writing, because we kind of, if that's the route they're going with, then we already know Thalia's going to join the Olympians. So, like, why are we doing this weird, like, this weird runaround where it's like, oh, she's a villain for 2 seconds. Like, oh, we tricked you there, didn't you? Like, no, like, we already know she's going to be like the hero at the end of the day. So this really only works if Thalia kind of remains a villain for the end of the, like, until like the end of the show, which I guess that could be interesting. Like, it would be kind of a weird twist on the story, but, you know, creative agency, I guess. But it's still kind of dumb. Like, that's not what we asked for. We asked for the books to be translated into live action, not for this weird like workaround situation. And so once again, it's just like, why are we taking away the agency of these characters, specifically our female character? Let's talk about Annabeth again. This is kind of my final big complaint of the show, like in general. Now, I've always held to the belief that Annabeth should be blonde. That sounds surface level, but I'm going to get to that in a bit. But putting that aside for a second, this version of Annabeth is growing on me. However, that's only because the actress, Leah Jeffries, is actually doing a good job with what she's given, not because she's characterized well. While season 2 Annabeth is far better than last season, specifically like showing her pride being a weakness and her relationship with both Luke and Thalia, we are still missing her primary character motivation, which is trying to prove herself. I mean, that was like that's like a huge component of her character, and like really, again, it's her main driving like motivation throughout the whole series. And you kind of see it here, but it's not that in depth. I mean, again, it's like Tyson and Percy's relationship in the beginning of the season. I don't really feel an emotional connection with this character because she's kind of just explaining her problems instead of us actually seeing them. So at the end of the day, I don't really care about this character, which goes back to the blonde thing. In the books, she was always put down and seen as less than because everyone thought she was a stupid blonde. That was a really big stereotype back in the day. These days, you know, it doesn't seem like that's as big of a thing, but that was a good way to show Annabeth's flaws and how she deals with them and how she grows as a character. Like, it was really well formulated. And so when you remove that and when you remove us seeing her insecurities, it kind of removes her agency or her, like, how interesting she is as a character. This new Annabeth is kind of just in the show. Now, given the new casting, they still could have made this work. There's been a stereotype for a long time that black people aren't as smart. I mean, way back in the day, like when they were trying to figure out evolution and stuff, they were trying to come up with this stupid argument that, oh, like the black brain is smaller than the white brain. It's like, what the hell are you saying? Like, this is not founded in facts or reality whatsoever. And so that kind of mentality has kind of seeped into today, unfortunately. I think very specifically in today's society, unfortunately, a lot of black people don't have as much access to high quality education, mostly because education is incredibly expensive, and due to the, you know, ongoing effects of segregation and all that, like it's harder for a lot of black people to get high quality education. And so a lot of people associate this with black people are dumber, which is stupid, it's racist, it's trash, like it doesn't make any sense at all. However, I think they could have used this for Annabeth's character. You know, they look down on her because she's black, or, you know, they think she's not capable, when in reality she is. Like, she is capable, and in fact more capable than a lot of other people. Like, again, she's the daughter of Athena. She's like one of the smartest individuals in Camp Half-Blood. And so what makes Annabeth such an interesting character in the books is that she represents breaking down stereotypes and, you know, not only proves that she's worthy, but proves she's actually way more competent than a lot of these other people who are putting these barriers and labels onto her. And in doing so, she encourages the readers to, you know, to emulate that spirit of, you know, pushing past all these obstacles that people put onto us. In the show, she's kind of just there for the ride. And while they made her a better character this season, and she did have some good character moments, ultimately they still have not respected the character, which is kind of a big problem. I mean, if Percy is the most important character in the franchise, Annabeth is right there with him. She's like number 2 most important characters. Why are Clarice and Tyson better characters than Annabeth? I mean, out of all the characters that, like, the main characters they've handled this season, like, what, she ranks like 6 or 7? Percy himself is at number 3, which is just embarrassing for the main character. Luke is then probably at number 4, and Grover at number 5, which again, for the third guy in the trio, is just embarrassingly low. So to start to wrap this up, again, I want to reiterate that this overall is a much, much better season than season 1. Season 1 was kind of a drag, just a play-by-play, a speed run, whereas season 2 was a lot of fun, and there were a lot of good character moments. But it's a lot of these main things the show has like a big problem with. Again, the gods cannot be this evil. Like, we really, really need to emphasize why the villain is the main villain and not the gods. And they really need to step up with Percy and Annabeth's writing. I mean, they should not be any lower than top 2 like best handled characters. And so while I'm still interested in season 3, there is still a lot of room for growth with the show, especially as it comes to the overarching plot of the series. But that's kind of it, y'all. Let me know your thoughts if you watched this season. What were your thoughts? Do you agree or disagree with my takes here? Buy my book, selfish plug, link in the description. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for watching, and may the force be with you.